up a bunch of things. All right. Welcome, creatives, community, kind folks, and unfortunately, we don't have any classmates or collegiates today from Fantasy Grounds College, but they will be. Rest assured, they will be returning with us. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and maybe even Discord. I'll broadcast uh, uh, audio on. Let's. There we are. And if someone wants to just hear the audio and you are a member of the Discord for this channel, RPG with DBJ, you can pop over to that. I know it's a little bit of a juggle, so I apologize for that, guys.
It's my fault. Just blame me.
It's fine. All right. Okay. So, what is today's subject? All right. So let's get a little preamble here. This week we are talking about technology and arcana, and let me be a little bit specific with this. We're not talking about mixing technology and magic. What I'm proposing is that we talk about our tabletop experience. If the worlds that we have, that it's not really considered magic any longer, it's science. And it doesn't matter what era you're talking about, whether it is our classic Dungeons and Dragons with magic spells and dragons and trolls and that kind of thing, or you're talking modern day horror, or you're talking far future with alien races and psionics and all that kind of thing. What we're really going to talk about is your average citizens, your population, how the world operates, and the rules that we use for the game somehow correlate to how the world relates to those same events. My example here is going to be, we know when we're playing. Yeah. Well, I know that term. Pelora says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We're going the opposite direction here, right? So, my example for this will be, we know in Dungeons and Dragons that if you want to play a character like a mage or some form of wizard or cleric or druid or something, that you have so many spell slots. And my contention is, what if the rest of the world is completely aware that you only have so many spell slots? That everyone knows that that magic is cast by that magic is cast using verbal components or somatic components. So someone says, "Hey, before that wizard utters something, shut his mouth," or something like that. And this is going to go for across the board. So that is what I'm proposing.
I'm still not really sure what you mean, to be honest.
We'll get there. But today is Monster Monday, and by the way, guys, that's my last thing. Fat Ninja says, "Oh, your voice channel's back up. Somebody was being stupid and removed it without asking anybody." Okay, I will go over and promote that, and I will activate it over in Discord, because I did notice that over in Fantasy Grounds that it was missing. So I'm going to connect. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, a little bit of a odd start there. I hope those who go over to Fantasy Grounds College or are already into Fantasy Grounds College will realize that I am the audio is coming through, that I am verbalizing over there. Pelora says, any sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable from technology. I love that. Yes, and the answer to that is yes. Tesla Ranger says, it goes on to give the same the Arthur C. Clarke version, which is where that term comes from. Any sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable.
That's why we call technology which isn't explainable with current physics Clarke tech.
Yes. There is an excellent YouTube channel dedicated to that. I mean,
Arthur I have his podcast. I think I know what you mean.
yes, Arthur Isaac. Yes,
Arthur Isaac. That's what. Yeah.
he lives a little over an hour north of me, as a matter of fact, in Ashtabula County here in Ohio. So I, I'm glad to say that I can drop his name and say that I'm a little close in whatnot.
He has a weird accent, to be honest. I've always confused if he's some where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Lazor. Hello?
No, I'm just the guys over at Fantasy Grounds. They are not muted. Yeah.
Yeah. Palora, I like Numenera. I also wrote some stuff for Numenera, and I've got a campaign from Numenera on my channel, but it's in German. So
it's all right. Now,
by the way, I'm Vincent Shine. I don't think we have mentioned already. I'm just joining DBJ today. I'm the guy who always spams the chat when he's there.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to introduce you, sir. For those who don't know, Vince was with me when we did a very large project where we decided to build using the classic Dungeons and Dragons classes. We decided to do each day build a world where that class was the major
force, yeah.
motivator, and that was a huge campaign. I think we did like 12
or 13, something like that.
Yeah, it was when we passed by like number 6, it was like, this is going to be a while. All right, so now to get back to the subject, I thought we would go, we're not talking, I don't want us to talk about how mysterious magic is, because I think we're inappropriately
so you basically you want to say that magic is mundane, so everyone knows how it works, basically?
Yes.
Isn't that called folk magic sometimes?
Yes, and I'm not saying that we necessarily, because the first thing that's going to happen is I can see us very easily going towards like like Eberron or what's the other one? Ravnica, which those two settings are very common, right? They are like a default. But I'm also talking about folk magic. We all know about, like, all of us have, as kids even, have learned various folk magic things. For example, I don't know.
Knock on wood 3 times.
Yes, knock on wood, salt over the shoulder, don't walk a broken mirror, or don't walk under a ladder. Those kind of things.
There's also this a bit more obscure stuff when you're a seaman, that sometimes they paint ice on their ship to scare away bad omens and stuff like that. There are some niche things a lot of people do just to get rid of bad luck or stuff like that.
Testing. All right, there. Yes. As a matter of fact, like, especially when it comes to, when it comes to sailors and and that kind of thing, the idea that a sacrifice or tribute of some sort must be made to go on these long journeys. Like you said, they would paint. They would paint or carve these things on the bow of their ships. Even there we go. Yeah, the dead man says the Discord is working now. Great. The idea that gargoyles in a Gothic architecture, that if you place this scary carving, this monster, that it would scare away other creatures. bless.
Yeah, I've always thought it would be a defense. At least in Germany, we tell it's a defense against the bad sight of a witch.
Yes, yes, and that's what I wanted to get at. I know it's a long preamble for this, so um, essentially the idea that I'm thinking about for the rest of this week is that the your common citizens, your population, even if the magic is not very common, its implementation, people know what it is. People know trolls are vulnerable to acid and fire. People understand the differences between, say, a dragon and a wyvern or wyvern or a serpent. Like they understand how things work. They understand that if someone comes into their town with a ball of, I don't know, bat guano in their pocket, that they have the next thing you know I'm going to do is cast a fireball, right? So, but so what I'm getting at is this seems, by describing things this way, it seems to remove some of the mystery. But I think we could really play with it. And I know in the thumbnail, I put this like little robot inside of it. And the first thing to me that comes to mind are, of course, constructs. But we don't have to limit ourselves to constructs. We could meaning a purposefully created, magically enhanced creation that operates for people.
Yeah, I had this idea one time that familiars work similar to muses in Eclipse Phase. So that familiars are somehow linked, and also each person can get a familiar with them, and they can communicate with each other. So you could basically use them as your smartphone.
In many ways, I think that's exactly how they work. They operate. They're able to talk with them and use them as like smartphones slash drones, kind of,
Yeah,
to and performing small little tasks for them, grabbing small items or delivering messages. Um, Maybe even give you're able to not only just impart a message to them for that message to be sent to someone else, whether it's a written form or they're able to speak, but you could also put them on a mission of sorts. Hey, please gather my 3 friends and tell them to meet me at the docks, kind of thing. And the familiar or the small animal or spirit, fey creature or something goes off on its way because you've fed it cookies and milk, the night before or something.
yeah,
Um,
but maybe there is a market for these things, and if you got enough funds, you can just buy a familiar for yourself.
sure, if there's an economy for it, I could imagine that. Or even there could be a funnel to get them. So, for example, maybe the population has to go to a specific guild, or there could be, maybe there's the old grandmother that lives in the woods, and if you go to her with certain, um, she's the one that kind of looks you up and down and sees if you're like worthy or gives you permission to beseech these creatures. Or there may be some place in the deep woods where you can just go there, a glen or a circle of rocks or something, and the people may even go there. Families may even go there and call out to these small creatures, and
Mhm.
and it may be one of those things, not like a lottery so much, but some may go and nothing answers, and they're like, oh well, I guess I'll have to try tomorrow. And
A
then others,
trial for the worthy.
yeah, it could be a small trial, and the trial may not be what we're us tabletop players, like it's not a trial to the death or something. It could be something simple as um if it's not handing over gold, it could be something like a favor, or handing over a memory. You have to give up a memory in order to receive this boon and whatnot. And other people in these towns and cities may understand exactly what you did as well. So not only is this, say, this farming family, now they have these familiars, but the other people in towns know exactly what they did to receive it, to get these small fey creatures or animals or something around them.
Yeah.
And going even further, I would say that what if in these worlds that the people, let's say for example, there are were creatures and trolls and lizard folk and those kind of things, that the people are not only are they able to communicate with them, but maybe there are ways for these people to acquire their abilities or something. For let me be a little more specific. Trolls may not just be a biological thing, but they could come about through a course of action that someone takes. For
So if
example,
you're greedy, you become a troll, for
right,
example.
right. Not necessarily a someone who is cursed, but through some sort of action, or
A
you
curl.
become, yeah, I mean, well, it
I
could be a,
mean, you could make a disease out of it too. That if you're going to the swamp for too long, then you're slowly transforming into a troll, and everybody knows it. So if you ever have to go to the swamp, you have to hurry or you transform.
yes, very much so, very much so. It could be, if maybe a certain region, you must travel through it before the sun sets, or you could become afflicted, or like you say, maybe the shortest path between two cities is through the swamp, but everyone knows to avoid the swamp, and those who take the shortcut through the swamp might become in diseased or infected, or um, maybe there's something you're not supposed to eat or partake in, like some kind of narcotic. Everyone knows it's addictive and it changes you and makes you become, your evil tendencies come out, but people still partake in it anyway. Maybe there could even be a slight bonus uh, to doing it before the horror sets in, and
Yeah.
everyone knows it. Everyone's, maybe some people could see the person's eyes starting to change, or their skin or their hair starts to fall out or something, and they can see that these changes are happening. Maybe they start to grow taller, or they have fits of anger or something. And in the Go ahead.
What my question for this world would be, because everybody knows, there must be a reason that everybody knows. So either this is tradition and just given away from generation to generation, or there's some kind of organization maybe that teaches these things and maybe even trades with these things.
Yeah. Now, to bring up something that was said, kind of said in the chat, like, Pelora says real eyes might be worth more than artificial ones, so someone might trade them for something. um and I know, being a little sarcastic, but the like you said about an organization, there may be the trade-off for the population might be such that it, depending on someone's lifestyle, it may be worth it to give up one thing for something else. Um, for example, the idea of being cursed to become a troll, maybe temporarily this individual is helping their family out, either through trade goods, or um, joining forces with some form of bandits, because the bandits maybe have threatened their family, or um, a rich noble wants something that is very valuable and wants it today, and they need it very quickly, and this person is willing to roll the dice and take the chance that they might become infected or cursed, traveling through a swamp to get it to this rich noble who could care less about the lifestyle, the outcome of receiving this from this individual. And the reason why I bring this subject up, I know we're well past 20 minutes into it. The reason why I bring it up is because sometimes in our role-playing games, of course, we have ourselves our classic Dungeons and Dragons, but it doesn't matter what the setting is. We have elements in it that sometimes we would really love to bring into the forefront. And I think even if we take a corner of our world where the people understand kind of how the world works, in their own way, we can pull things, especially like monsters and magic and some of the really bizarre elements in our role-playing games. We could bring them out into the forefront without having to do the classic, okay, you need to make a 3-month trek away from civilization to encounter this thing. So
so you can basically bring the weird to the civilization.
Correct. For example, you might want to have a world where there aren't just regular assassins, but there are arcane assassins. They, literally these assassins turn to shadow or mist, or are able to change their shapes, or flow under doors in this city of thieves or something. And maybe there's one or more assassins guilds where you move up from being a thug to a cut purse to a spy to eventually giving yourself over to drinking a dark elixir, or beseeching the highest members of the Assassin's Guild, who bestow upon you, maybe it takes 5 members to bestow upon you these abilities to transform you into something. And yes, I understand that this sounds very much like becoming a not a sorcerer, a warlock. I'm not necessarily talking about a living sentient person granting you abilities, like granting an NPC other abilities, but it could be other events. For example, there could be a dark cave that someone goes in, and if you spend 3 days and nights and you come out, this thing happens. Or someone
stellar constellation, a certain specific time where you have to be at a specific place to receive a curse, a gift, or whatever.
Yes.
That's the interesting thing about folk magic, in my opinion, that you can try to include things like, if you know a certain thing, then that's basically equivalent to power. If you know the thing with the salt over the shoulder, then you can suddenly protect yourself from a certain monster, for example. Maybe there are fairies who are afraid of salt or whatever. There could be some benefit to just knowing things.
And I think the same could be done for the same technique could be used for incorporating extremely powerful creatures or adversaries in your world when the PCs numerically aren't prepared for them, because in their back pocket you could have these folklore remedies or resistances. And I think one of the great examples of this are your classic vampires, right? Usually in the stories of the classic vampires, humanity has very little ability to fight them, right? But the vampire has a lot of little weaknesses and things. You can't enter into a home unless you're invited. Can't cross running water. Repelled by holy symbols. Repelled by garlic. Unseen in a mirror. And of course, we've seen in our pop culture various versions of that. But I'm thinking, if including them in the world, for example, the idea that you cannot come in unless you're invited, or sprinkling salt in front of an entryway prevents fey creatures from coming in. What a great way to incorporate some of those maybe very powerful fey creatures or fiends or something in your world. And the PCs are like 3rd level, right? So they know the current population already knows the way to prevent these fey creatures from coming into their homes. They've been doing it for years. They've been doing it for generations.
That's maybe the reason why the cities are safe. But once you step out, these measurements don't work anymore for some reason. Maybe they have stepstones and a circle of stones around the city. And once you step over it, suddenly you can get attacked by monsters again.
Exactly. Even some of the PCs may have even grown up performing some of those actions. Not necessarily a guild devoted to it, but maybe the townsfolk once a month or something renews this salted line that goes around the entire town or something, right? Everyone gets together. There's 50 townsfolk with sacks of salt, and the kids are playing, but the adults are like, make sure the salt line isn't broken or whatever. And they spill this, I mean, they could literally, this could literally be a gathering of people who are used to this, and
the cool thing would be if a group of adventurers would be resting somewhere, they could just bring salt with them and protect their camping site.
Absolutely. And the fey creatures out in the wild who understand this might be trying to, instead of going to the dice and saying roll initiative and let's fight, they might be speaking to them across the salted line, trying to convince them to oh, I know you've grown up in this city. You don't have to worry about that. That's not how it works. We're not dangerous. This could be a way for them to try to parlay with the party without using magic to do it. It's like some of them might be trying to bribe the PCs or befriend them, or maybe using this has been, not only have they been keeping away the mischievous fey creatures, maybe the good ones have been kept at bay as well. And they really want to talk to someone who's willing to listen. And the PCs might not, they're kind of weighing the options like, okay, well, what we thought was wrong, but at the same time, this works, right? Maybe it's possible even spilling salt on fey creatures may itself cause harm to them.
Yeah, they had this weakness against iron oftentimes, and I can remember in the Gargoyle series, there was this one time where they had to defeat a powerful fey creature, and they smithed their only iron they had into a bell, and when they rang the bell, it was hurting them.
Wow, I love that show.
This show was so amazing.
It was more far better written and developed than it had any right to be, I think. But again, that had some great world building elements into it too. Gargoyles has a great show. Pelora says, and also adds in, and knowing things wrong. Fairies might be afraid of magnesium sulfate, a salt, but people are putting table salt around their house and things are going poorly, which is another great thing about fairy tales and wives' tales, that over time, especially if they work, the threat kind of goes away. And maybe people get things wrong. For example, the idea of nursery rhymes, right? Kids in small towns and streets start, singing nursery rhymes, where 3 generations ago, those nursery rhymes may have literally caused, I don't know.
Maybe that's the reason why you have healthy children, or maybe it keeps the monsters away, which try to kidnap your babies or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And the first generation that was able to resist that, they know the horrors up front, right? They know that the monsters of the world, the goblins and the kobolds and the minotaurs and such, the trolls of the world are the offspring of their own births. But 3 generations later, it hasn't happened any longer, or happened so rarely that some people may just go, no, so-and-so just ran off in the woods and wanted to run off with their loved one from another town. They didn't become a troll. And it could be that today, in today's world, now all of a sudden, the things that used to be are just rumor are true, that the sprinkling of the salt does keep those things at bay. And maybe the PCs can uncover some of these remedies, these banes to keep these things at bay.
Wouldn't it be kind of interesting if some domesticated animals used to be monsters, and they can maybe return to being monsters if you treat them wrong? Something similar to don't feed them after midnight or stuff like that, or don't feed them specific food, or sometimes they will go feral again.
I thought about the Gremlins,
Yeah,
which is a classic 80s mid 80s movie.
yeah,
If anyone hasn't seen it in a long time, but Tesla Rangers as were cows. Um, but yes, absolutely. The idea that there are, like you said, there's something domesticated. It could be a domestic pet or farm animal or even a hunting animal like wolves. I mean, in essence, humanity has domesticated dogs and cats, which are derived from two of the most dangerous predators in the world. Um, I mean, lupines and feline creatures out in the wild are some of the most dangerous things, and we've decided to domesticate them. But they could be 10 minutes away from returning to their bestial natures.
yeah.
If it was
Imagine having a horse suddenly returning to being some kind of horrid nightmare creature when it goes to in a circle in the woods, for example, or your cat suddenly becomes a feral cat and attacks you and stuff like that.
So now here's something else that Pelora brought up. One of my favorites of those is that in South Africa, people put their bed on bricks to escape a monster. It saved lives because people were dying of carbon monoxide poisoning in actuality. And a lot of our uh, our wives' tales that have come about were due to, and I'm doing air quotes, scientific reasoning to prevent some sort of thing happening. Like, for example, um, the idea that uh, I'm trying to think of something that was a wives' tale that became a true thing in our lives because we realized it scientifically. Oh, um, the idea of cleanliness, right? It- at one point, people were saying that some animals are dirty, like pigs are dirty, or you shouldn't mix dairy with certain other items. Like there should be a separation of food safety. Okay, and it was very much described as a religious mantra, right? Do this thing because it keeps things pure. But in actuality, what was happening is by doing those things, dairy, for example, dairy products without refrigeration spoils very quickly. It gets diseases, it gets bacteria and
Yeah,
such in it. If you right, if
there's
you
also this example of Jews only washing in flowing water. And that's the reason why a lot of Jews didn't get sick in the Middle Ages, because they didn't use the seawater, for example, or water from lakes, which was standing there and developing bacteria.
right, and we could take that in our own games, not necessarily taking the actual science of it, but people perform certain actions because they believed if they didn't, they would receive harm. And come to find out, that is actually a true thing. An example would be the idea of the bed on bricks, right? Well, what if human beings were creating, say, as they walk around and they sleep or something, let's say they're creating a vibration into the underdark or something, and certain creatures are drawn to their scent or their motion or something. And so when people put their homes on stilts, it makes sense that there's something under the ground that could go after them in their sleep. But those of us, by the time it comes to modern day, we're like, well, why are people still putting their beds up on bricks or stilts or something? There's no reason for that. And come to find out, like, yeah, there's a reason why. This wasn't just a tradition. This really saved people's lives to avoid certain things, whether it's
Yeah. It's
you
it's
know
it's weird because there are a lot of these common misconceptions still in the world. For example, you shouldn't swim after you've eaten and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it's even if it's not really true, a lot of these stick. So people just do them out of tradition, or maybe they think they are still relevant. I've also heard that salmonella are not that big of a thing anymore as they used to be 10 or 20 years ago, but still a lot of people are really afraid of them. For example, there are tons of these things, honestly.
Absolutely, and I mean, just taking a handful of them and sprinkling them in the world, like for example, Pelora says will-o-wisps, I think, are a thing. I'm not sure. Will-o-wisps, the idea of and I think this is a very common one, although it's very broad. The idea of traveling or going somewhere and not being distracted by hallucinations or sounds or bizarre lights in the distance, or um, being fooled by what is in the
Yeah,
desert.
there are tons of possible explanations for that. There could be some natural occurring phenomena which just reflects light, or you could just get mad from being alone too much on a long journey. There are tons, or maybe there are gases which cause these hallucinations, or whatever you ate in the travel, or whatever.
Absolutely, and of course, we're playing tabletop role playing games. Who's to say that either or even both are true? So, yes, there are gases that maybe make people pass out or drive them insane. And yes, it could be going through the deserts or traveling alone on the open seas may drive someone to, do things that they wouldn't normally do or go off the beaten path. But maybe once they succumb to it, there are nasties out there like will-o-wisps or fey creatures or some other beasties out there that prey on those who are distraught or lost or confused or hungry, or that kind of thing. That may literally happen. And so while the remedy might be true, for example, the sailors that say, stick some cotton in your ears so you're not hypnotized by the sirens, there may be in actuality, it could be, maybe they're suffering from some kind of sea rot or scurvy or insanity, and they're jumping overboard. And once they jump overboard, they then are attacked by sirens that are awaiting these individuals that jump overboard. But it has nothing to do with the sirens actually charming anyone. It could be that they're just jumping overboard, being attacked, and we are linking two separate events together. But yeah, and
I once had the idea that playing some kind of West Marches like Sandbox, that collecting these tricks or remedies which protect you from monsters or maybe give you some other benefit would be the main cause of developing your settlement. So if you know how to deal with the goblins nearby, suddenly you can expand to the woods where the goblins are and stuff like that. And learning these secrets would be some kind of mechanic inside the game.
I absolutely would love something like that. I think we again, I think something that we maybe don't touch on too much. Even in let's take our classic Lord of the Rings, right? There were trolls that, if they were exposed to sunlight, turned to stone. Uh, there are like um, James James says a good old goblin in home training. I mean, there are what's the Jack and the Beanstalk. If you play music, you can calm the savage beast. There may be goblins who they're completely evil and they're backstabbing and they're like little gremlins and they're nasty. But if they hear the right song or the right story, or you entertain them enough, maybe they become passive and they sit around the PC and not necessarily the bard either, right? Maybe they love terrible music and they want the barbarian to sing them a song or read them a story.
Maybe they just want to steal your sugar, and once you give them some sugar, they just stand there and eating for hours. I also had heard the idea of someone who said that mother's milk would kill goblins, which is a kind of a weird thing to think about.
James is like, now you have couch goblins. Yeah, but it's silly, but why not? You know, the PCs go into town and they see all of these people who are just really calm and friendly, and they're engaged in these strange acts like putting a bowl of sour milk in the window, or before someone walks into a building there's a small statue that they rub the statue before they go in, and to them it's just no big thing. And then when the PCs do not perform that act, and they have a, they go into the inn and they have their rooms and whatnot, and they wake up and their beds are surrounded by these like goblins who are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs like, hey dude, where's our milk? The
Oh,
PC's are like, what? Yeah, no, you're surrounded by like 30 goblins just sitting there waiting on you.
that man told about Harry Potter series had the house elves, and weirdly enough, Harry Potter is a great example of this kind of story idea of folk magic, because basically everything in the world of Harry Potter is folk magic, because the wizards generally know stuff about this world. They have a bit of a mixture because some things are mystery, but most things which are fantastical for us are mundane to them. They know about port keys and about flying on brooms, and they even have a sport for it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and uh, I the elf on the shelf idea, the Harry in like you said in Harry Potter, they do a pretty good job explaining to you the rules, like how things work. And like you said, there are things that are mysteries because the people don't know, but for the most part, little by little, the world of magic is explained to us as the participant, because the people in the world need to know those rules as well. It's like combination. I like Tesla Ranger. James, the Tesla Ranger, says, James is stealing all your couch change. And Tesla says, while you're laying on the couch, the goblins pick your pockets and store it under the cushions. An explanation of where that lost sock goes. That's another thing, too. If you really want to, I understand that we feel good. Opening up a can of whoop ass, right? We feel good when we get to like, I get to roll the dice and wreck shop and destroy things. But evil creatures or adversaries don't necessarily have to have death and destruction in mind. The idea that the goblins want to steal things from you because they just happen to be shiny, or they are building a nest, or they are assembling I don't know, a strange scarecrow in the woods, because if they assemble the scarecrow will scare away other things. Like, it's not necessary that every creature has to kill the PCs. Maybe they want to kidnap innocent people because they want to bring them into their theater so that they could entertain them, right? The
Oh, there's a great a great animated series. I forgot the name. It's about a little girl who interacts with all kinds of mystical creatures, and she starts out living in a small hut in the woods. And for example, there's a wood creature coming in and just sitting at their chimney all the time and warming itself, and there's small people which you normally can't see until you sign a contract with them, and then you can see them everywhere suddenly, and stuff like that. And they had great ideas, but it's not Matilda, it's something similar. I'm not sure what the name was. The series is really great for inspiration.
I love that. I love the great idea that it could be, it could be, like you said, like the monster that's keeping warm on the on the chimney from the heat below. And maybe the turning point are when the PCs finally are able to pierce the veil of these creatures that normally no one else can see. But once they can see them, now they have complete interaction with them, whether they like it or not. And the creatures don't necessarily have to have very devious ulterior motives. It could be that they're very happy that, like, for example, children, we often hear in stories where children see things that the adults no longer see, but maybe the PCs carry that with them into adulthood. So the children play with the trolls and minotaurs and ogres in the woods because they want to have
it's just called Hilda.
Hilda. Ah, that's great. That's great.
You should really watch the series. It's a great series. It's made for children, but honestly it's really charming and cool. And has tons of cool ideas. A lot of folk magic, by the way, also too. There are, for some example, some magic books you find, but there's basically just a ritual described in there, and everyone can perform it. So if you know the certain ingredients and do it exactly like told in the book, then everybody can use this magic.
I like that idea because even your classic wizards in your world, right? I have 3 first level spell slots and 2 second level spell slots. It's possible that your average citizens, if given enough time or time, energy, knowledge, or even just getting together, maybe they're able to cast those same spell or spell-like effects, maybe not at the same rate of professionalism as some people, but an example would be maybe
you could cast the ritual spells, and maybe there's a mishap table because you make a small mistake or stuff like that.
Yeah, or maybe there's even there's the city is built around an old arcane, fort that has crumbled over the centuries, and things are written into the walls. And if the people just read off the walls, they can bring forth the magic. Like literally, the spells are written into the walls or something, and and the people are able to call upon that magic. Or maybe it requires at least 3 individuals to be of like mind and purpose to do it. Oh wow. Deadman says Hilda is on Netflix in the US. Wow, I didn't know that. James says that prestidigitation competition, sorry, but goes on to say, yes, hags that steal something from you to haunt you or curse you later, which is something else, right? It's the yes, there are many wives' tales and folklore about the hags that steal children and stick them into ovens, but what if it's necessary to keep them at bay, like I said before, giving of a memory or the promise that you will never again speak to a great love or something, and if you break the contract, they now have free reign. That the hag the hag maybe sells hag's milk that gives long life to anyone who drinks it, great health, strength, durability. This is how you get the strong, burly young men and women that work in the fields. But
if you drink it too long and become a giant.
Yep. And if you break the contract, the hag is like, you did this thing wrong, and now all of a sudden the members of the family become cursed or misshapen or transformed or turned to stone or something. And in order for the PCs to release them, they can't just kill the hag. Maybe they have to perform certain, I want to say, missions or fetch quests, but you get what I'm saying. Like, and it could be something very strange, like, I have 6 tasks for you, and the one task is to collect the tear from
a dragon,
right, or something, right? And so it's not a matter of killing the dragon; it's going to the dragon and telling the dragon a story so that he begins to tear up and cry, right?
This is actually a thing in the Dark Eye, by the way. There's a magic potion which needs the tears of a dragon. And there's also a potion which needs the snow fallen on a specific day in the year, and stuff like that. They had tons of these ingredients in there.
And what I also think it's a great way to, again, if you really want to, some games are especially Dungeons and Dragons and all of its iterations tends to be blasted because a lot of people feel like the lower levels are where it's very easy to die, right? There's not very much exciting going on, and it's fighting a lot of rats and goblins and kobolds, and it's like,
Yeah, and
nah.
the higher levels get too complicated, and you have suddenly too many options, and the monsters get just ludicrous. And so
Right.
I think most campaigns are comfortable at around 5th to 10th, maybe 12th level.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is a tool you could put in the back pocket to say, all right, there's a way. We do have win conditions, but the win conditions have nothing to do with either side dying, right? Not that there can't be murder involved, because we love ourselves some some murder hoboism, but maybe there are other ways. The evil hag doesn't want to take over the world. The evil hag wants to take care of her children, let's say, and it's not a matter of the evil hag, stealing children away. It could be maybe the evil hag just wants to it's a matter of being misunderstood or not being loved, or the people attacking the hag's children, which are now evil bestial things, and she's just defending them because they've been drinking her hag's milk and whatnot. And it could
Yeah,
be a complicated relationship.
that's also something that's weird in Hilda, because Hilda is a prodigy in interacting with creatures. And there's a city called Trollberg, and they build a really huge wall around it. And there's almost no fantastical creatures inside the city, but outside they are everywhere. And Hilda is able to see what the creatures actually really want and what they really do. And most of them aren't evil, they just misunderstood, or maybe they want something that nobody understands, or something like that. And this crux of most episodes is just finding out what the creature wants and how to interact with them, or maybe what they how they see the world. There's, for example, an episode, and right at the start of the first episode, there's a weirdly formed stone, and she binds a string around a part of the stone. And later, we found out that the stone was a troll, and they chase around, and they in the string there was a small bell, and the troll was just distracted by the spell and just wanted the spell to be removed. And everyone thinks these trolls are just bloodthirsty monsters, but it just wanted to get the spell away from him, and then it just left.
That reminds me of the thorn in the beast's paw kind of idea. The angry beast. It has been used and modified many times through both religion and fantasy and such, where the angry beast is ravaging everyone and scaring everyone until the one young hero was like, I'm standing up to you.
There was a thorn in the paw.
Yep. And it was just a thorn. I love that James says, I was thinking of murder hoboism too, which now proves, since both of us said it, that murder hoboism is a real word. But but also some of these adventures and missions could be returning things back to normalcy. So, for example, a poisoned, sludge-filled river, it may be that someone has to convince the water spirit to return back to the head of the river or the spring, or I'm just going to make this up, like a water the aquatic prince has been distracted by his true love that lives up in the mountains or something. And everyone's like, listen, you got to come back to the spring because you're the one that's keeping the spring water fresh. And the Fey prince is like, no, I'm far more interested in hearing the stories of my lady who lives up in the mountains, and it's like, okay, listen, you got it. The filter king. Yeah. it's the listen, we need you to come back home to keep the waters pure. Here's an idea. Why don't we bring the stories to you? Or maybe convincing the creature that it has more importance. Maybe it was offended because the people are not thanking it for keeping the river pure, and just gets mad and storms off somewhere. And it's like, no, we need you to come back. And or of course, there's also the idea of the river spirit being kidnapped or being charmed, and or being bribed to leave by, I don't know, the goblin, the chaos of the goblins that are just think that
Yeah,
just think the whole thing is funny.
and suddenly other skills besides combat become more relevant. It would also be really interesting to have some kind of sub jobs, or maybe something that's not combat related in regards to this world. Maybe someone who knows the rules of the specific race, which is really common, or maybe someone who's really good at negotiating between creatures, or maybe someone who's really good at finding secrets about creatures and stuff like that.
And and let's remember that, of course, we're going to take 5th edition as an example. um, we can bring skill attempts up to the same importance as an attack roll or spell casting roll. An example would be that it's maybe just as important to hack away at living vines as it is to make a disguise skill over, I don't know, a boulder, and convince the troll that you've put a wig and makeup onto a big boulder, and convince the troll that that's his, long lost love or something, and put the boulder into a cart and drag the cart back to town. And the troll's like, I will follow her anywhere, kind of thing. And
or maybe just the backgrounds get more important.
Yep. All right, baby. Have a great day.
Yeah, I can't stay too much longer than.
It's not too hot.
I can't stay. Sorry, I can't stay too much longer.
Yeah, we've hit the hour mark. Yeah, that's fine. The filter king, so silly. But yeah, I mean, I understand that this can get a little bit. It's easy for something like this to get a little ridiculous, and some of it is, right. And there's a little bit of dark comedy sometimes involved in these wives' tales. A way of, we know in our own cultures that this was a way of teaching young people safety about the world, or explaining events in the world that we don't understand. But I think by expanding it into our own games, if we want to add in a little bit of humor, if our games have gotten a little too dark, or we want to, it's like a pressure valve release system, right? Where we can say, you know what, we're doing this deep and dark thing, but let's have just a little bit of humor or comedy to alleviate things and still keep that edge of horror and darkness in it at the same time. And I
also think sometimes concepts which sound silly at first are really interesting if taken seriously.
Yes, absolutely. The oft times ignored things, like we talked about goblins, right? Or relating them kind of to like the movie Gremlins, where, like you said, if you take it seriously, it does become this thing where, I wonder what the world would be like. I wonder how society would change if goblins normally aren't murder hobos, if you just appease them. And then when you don't appease them and people start dying, that what we consider to be silly and ignoring the idea of feeding the goblins, sacks of sugar or something, becomes a real threat, a real problem. And
and suddenly the supply of sugar becomes essential to the survival of the fucking village.
Yeah, and all of a sudden gold becomes a useless commodity. We need to gather sugar, and we need it now. We need sacks of it. We need tons of it to appease them and figure out a way that we can do this on the norm without having to rely on 5 tons of sugar a month imported into town. but before we leave, one dark one storyline is the Pied Piper, right?
Yeah.
The pay me to get rid of the rats. Oh, you're going to screw me over. I'm going to take your kids.
Der
And
Rattenfänger von Hameln,
right,
as we
right. And,
call it in German.
okay, okay. And
Ratcatcher of Hameln.
Tesla's like sucrose or dextrose. Yeah, and it's this thing where you could modify some of these things where yes, in the idea of the Pied Piper stealing the kids, of course the Pied Piper's got to die. You just don't do that. But if the people have done something very minor, how hard is it to say, hey, why didn't you just pay this guy? He got rid of your rat problem. What was your point, right? It's solving yet another issue of, is this a social problem where the people are just rude and ignorant and conniving, and the Pied Piper's just a result of this town not learning their lesson?
Yeah, and also what happens with the kids afterward. Imagine they didn't return. Maybe they started a new town somewhere else.
Yeah. Maybe the Pied Piper never had any intention of hurting the kids anyway. He's just like, listen, I just wanted to teach you a lesson. They're fine. They're perfectly safe. But I just wanted to let you know that what you're doing is wrong, and you're backstabbing each other. And hey, don't backstab me, So anyway, this theme that I talk about, we're going to extend this through the rest of the week. We've pretty much blended this with world building and tips and tricks and all that other kind of crap. But but each day we're going to talk about this in terms of, if we know the world operates in a certain way, and the people in the world know it operates in a certain way, can we still add some mystery, some adventure, some other things? So yeah, that's exactly where I was going. And I'm it took me a little while, but I'm glad I was able to explain it and let you guys know what I was talking about. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Um, I really appreciate the fact that you guys are really part of this. Sir, if you could take us out, say goodbye to everyone, Mr. Vince.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening afterwards, and have a good day.
All right, Vince, and I'll see you later. Everyone, have a great one. See you. Bye.